Alright ladies and gentlemen, so this video's topic is the Entropy set. It's been about what, 6 months now almost that Gold River talked about deleting the set. Now I think a lot of this actually stems down to one of the concepts I talked about before in my class talk video, which is floors and ceilings. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but like most of my videos, I want to start off talking at a base level. I do assume that most of you are Lost Ark degenerates that don't need this kind of explanations, but just in case there are some people looking into the game or newer players, I do like to explain things at a base level and build up to the main topics. That's why I like to split up my videos how they are, and that's why I do timestamps. So real quick about the Entropy set, or really just sets in general. Once you do the starting Legion raids, Vulcan and Vicus, you can start crafting your set pieces. There's a 2-piece, a 4-piece, and a 6-piece bonus, and 9 different sets available. Once you clear these raids enough, you're able to access set conversion and change your set to whatever one of the 9 you want. You can also mix and match too, but that's not important for this kind of video. Even when you get better gear down the line, you're just upgrading this set to the higher quality ones. And then additionally on top of that, you can also upgrade the set to level 2 and 3. They are a core power system and design of Lost Ark. So one of those sets is the Entropy set. This is a set that is based around positional attacking, so either front or back attack. Moving forward, unless I really need to call out front or back, I will be just saying positional attacks. So to put it bluntly, the Entropy set is the best set in the game. It is the strongest set. If your class can effectively run this set, it's going to be our highest theoretical ceiling. So let's take a quick look at the set. So at level 3, you're looking at 22% crit damage, but that 22 is now 65% damage if you're hitting that positional. You're getting a raw 22% crit rate, then you're getting that 9% damage boost, but if you're hitting it positional, you're getting 26%. So basically, if you're hitting the proper positional, you're getting basically a 3 times damage boost, or crit damage. And then we're going to look at another set. This is going to be the hallucination set. Now, the reason why I'm picking this set is because it is a very popular set, and usually in situations where people try to take a positional class and play it non-positional, they default to hallucination. When Slayer came out in KR and people were testing out if it was be a back attack or not, if you could play it any other way, their main set that they were trying out was hallucination. If you look at, say, ESO War Dancer, you either play that Entropy or hallucination if you're doing non-positional. So yeah, level 3 hallucination, 17% damage, 20% crit rate, 50% damage, and 8% crit rate. So when you compare them, if you're hitting all your positionals, Entropy is going to have an additional 65% crit damage, and then 6% less crit rate, and 6% less damage. So the losses aren't as huge as what you're gaining on that crit damage. Now, however, if you are not hitting your positionals, now those numbers change quite a bit. Now Entropy only has a 20% crit damage change, still minus 6% crit rate, and 23% less damage. So without the positional bonuses, it's not really a good set. It's a very polarizing set, which then makes the situation of a low floor and high ceiling. And that's just the set. There is more to go into this than just the set. So if you are hitting your frontal attacks in the front, you're getting a 20% damage boost and 10% more stagger. And if you're hitting your back attacks in the back, you're getting an additional 5% damage and then an additional 10% to crit chance. But wait, there's more. If you are running these classes, if you are playing these positionals, you are running their respective engraving. So for front attackers, that is Master Brawler. For back attackers, that's Ambush Master, which is a 25% damage boost. So basically, if your uptime is good enough with these engravings, those are stronger engravings than Grudge itself. But again, if you're not hitting your positionals, then you're not getting that engraving at all. So then you have your set bonus, hitting your positional to get those bonuses just for hitting it on those types of skills, and then also your positional engraving. The ceiling on back attackers specifically is just extremely high. If you look at any tier list, so if we look at, say, ATK's latest tier list, 3 of the top 4, guess what they are? They're back attackers. There is a mix in there of burst and consistent damage. You know, I'm sorry, front attackers, you're not up there at the top. You have your own different problems besides the set itself. This set and how you play these builds, how you design playing around this set is huge, and it makes the strongest classes in the game. There is very little times where, you know, the top classes aren't a positional class. Sure, we had a little bit of time where people loved Ignited Sword. We had a little bit of time where people loved Sharpshooter. Arcana was kind of up there, but not completely up there. Then we have Barrage, Arty. Yes, they're there. But the thing is, classes like Surgeblade, for example, it is consistently up there. And now we're seeing Predator Slayer up there too. But we're not here to talk about their design, so let's move on. So when it comes to the problem itself, when Gold River had the stream and talked about it, it was really about the boss design, the AI, where Entropy was getting in the way. They were coming to the conclusion that it's just not good for the health of the game. As we're getting deeper and deeper to the game, as they release new content, they're trying to make it harder. The Korean community, for example, they called out Smilegate saying that the game was too easy, it needed to be harder. So that's when they stepped it up. And to make things harder, they have to force players to move around a lot. They have to make the boss move around. They can't let the boss just be a dummy. They can't let it be Trixian Simulator. Back in the earlier days, Vulcan, Vicus, Clown, there's a lot of times where you're that just had free DPS windows, pretty big ones. This is why classes like Igniter shined back then. Because there was such large windows, they had a much less chance of missing that second Doomsday 12 seconds later that they can't hold, they had to pop it. And this is also kind of why we've seen a rise of consistent damage classes. A Predator Slayer's damage ceiling, it's not that high. It's not a great damage class. However, because of its ability to be full swiftness, move around, and still hit the boss and get a pretty good uptime, it's a practical S tier. Which on that topic, I just want to go and say that there's still a lot of classes that need help. They need to be modernized because they just don't feel right for the content for this kind of new AI, the new style of bosses. They just don't feel good. So hopefully they continue to really push on this and make these old classes that just feel archaic feel good again. So when they're trying to create these boss fights, these encounters, and make them harder, they have to make it more crazy. They have to make it nutty. They have to make things move around. They have to make it more reactive to make it harder, which in turn makes it really hard to balance things around the idea of classes that had to keep on moving around and chasing the back. Because the difference in their uptime and their back attack is going to be the difference between a fighter and a cruel fighter, and it makes it really hard to balance the game and the bosses and all the design when a lot of your classes are these positionals. So to free themselves of this change, these problems, these limits, these shackles, their first thought was, hey, let's just fucking yeet it. Now, a key issue of this is the design of the game, the environment of the raids. So in Legion raids, you cannot taunt, but even if you could taunt, there's only a few classes that taunt, and it's not like it holds aggro for a long time. This is not a Holy Trinity game. This is not that type of game. This isn't like Final Fantasy where you have front, back, and side attackers, essentially. This is a much more chaotic environment. This is not a controlled environment. In a controlled environment, they can estimate how well a class is going to perform with the greatest of ease. Like, it is so much easier to balance that kind of stuff when you have clear and concise roles like that. Like, if you're doing a triangle with 3 back attackers and your support, that's actual hell because there is no aggro. So that means this boss here is going to turn and do a mechanic to somebody, and 3 out of 4 chances it's probably going to be somebody on the back, which means everybody has to reposition. But it's not even just back attacks sabotaging each other. The first point is that the back is a very safe space. So as a DPS, it's pretty common to think, I'll just go to the back. The second is there are classes like, say, Fistler Deadeye, who do not run Ambush Master. They do not run Entropy set. However, they still have skills that have a back attack modifier on it. This means that if they want to reach their ceiling, they're probably going to go to the back. So initially they talked about like they wanted to delete it, but now they're kind of sounding like they want to just rework it. Reworking it, I think, is a better idea. Just like how I talked about in the support video, I don't think deleting that's a good idea either, because it homogenizes the game and makes all the classes feel a little bit more samey if they go that route. Deleting it would also cause a huge waterfall effect and just other things that would happen. Imagine having a 9/7 with Ambush Master on it, and then suddenly either that engraving is just straight up gone or just not a viable engraving anymore because you're going to use a different set because you don't really have to worry about back attack as much. That will be a lot of angry people. Just all things build related would have to change along that, because if they fundamentally don't want to worry about people doing positionals, that would mean they would just want to get rid of positionals, which also wonders how they would do it with Hitmaster, because that is a non-positional thing, but that would make it like a universal engraving that affects basically everything but your ult and bleeds. Deleting it would just be a huge can of worms. That would just be a lot of problems, and I think they've realized that, which is why they're going towards the rework angle. Now, when it comes to changing it, I can't say I have any ideas for numbers and ways to change the set itself. That's up to them, but I think the overall design and logic of it would be to raise the floor and lower the ceiling. Doing your positional attacks should still feel rewarding, be rewarding, and still have the higher ceiling than not hitting them. However, on the flip side, I don't think they should be completely punished, disparaged for not hitting it. I do not think that the difference should be between a fighter and a cruel fighter. It should be an upright to a cruel fighter. I also think that the general space for a back attacker and a front attacker is too small. You're basically sniffing that butt crack or right up in the crotch. Changing the space on the boss, around the boss, to being a near 50-50 for frontal and back attack would actually just increase the floor a lot on its own. And ironically, I think a big change would be actually changing up the non-positional classes. Because again, earlier we talked about Deadeye, how they still have an incentive to go for the back attack. So classes like that, I think they should have more tripods that negate the back attack for a little extra, more consistent damage to them. With tripods and a design like that, they would be more incentivized to just set the side as opposed to losing some damage to reposition. With these characters not at the back with the back attackers, plus an increased range for the back and front attack, even if the boss does change position to target this kind of Hitmaster class on the side, there's going to be less misses on your positional classes. And then on the topic of other classes, I think other classes should be powerful too, because again, looking at that tier list, 3 of the top 4 all back attackers. Back attackers are just a common meta, a common top tier class that a lot of people love to play, which is not a bad thing, but then you end up with a lot of raids, a lot of groups that have a lot of back attackers, which then they're griefing each other because of the positional of all being a back attacker, then aggro flying around to the back attack, and then they all have to chase around. So I think overall balancing is a factor as well that they could consider, and they should consider. So to wrap this up, because I don't want this to be another long video, root of all this problem is because we are not in a Holy Trinity game. There is no tank roll, so aggro flies around everywhere. So this makes all this kind of stuff uncontrolled and just overall chaotic. This video is not me saying, hey, add a real tank roll to the game. This is me saying that there is a lot of moving wheels and cogs to this thing that takes time. Let them cook, let them see what they come up with, and hopefully this isn't another Third Awakening scenario where they just talk about it for the next like forever years and then it's like, it's probably never really coming. I think deleting it would be unhealthy for the game and worse for the game and community in the long run than just keeping it as is. And I think reworking it to have a higher floor and a lower ceiling would make the class even more accessible to everybody and easier to battle. And obviously there are easier and harder classes to play, but again, in general, I don't think the difference should be fighter to cruel fighter. It should be more condensed to like an upright to a cruel. The developers do look at the damage ranges of the average players, and that's why they're seeing this huge variance, which is causing the problem when they're designing it. So by effectively changing the classes, the sets, and all that stuff to reduce the damage variance, they can now worry about that less and positional less when they're designing new raids, new bosses, new encounters. But that'll be it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this situation. So if you want to hit me with that like and sub, I'd appreciate it. But that's it for this week. I'll catch you guys next time. Unless I post another depressing video of a rock I shouldn't have cut. You know, maybe I do a 30-second yap during my outro. We'll see. I want to say that even though I'm not like actively responding to these comments that you guys leave in my videos, I am absolutely reading them all of them. If I get the feeling that I need to respond or I should respond, like if it's very valuable information for me to give to somebody, I absolutely will. But it was getting a bit rough trying to manage all that when I was doing the class talk videos. So I think this is kind of the route I want to go. I think about my Bible video pretty often. And I think, what if I come back here in a few months and I just see a bunch of people responding to their comments saying how they got smoked? Think of all the gems that would be lost. Oh man.